Hi, I'm RC Jim, and welcome to the third video in our series on the build of this Dauntless SBD dive bomber. Beautiful plane, and it's coming along really well. We'll get you in this video to the point where it's basically nearly complete mechanically, all of that stuff being done. And then there'll be one more video, I imagine, that will deal with the programming of the radio. There's a fair bit of mixing that needs to get done with the setup that we've got here, and we'll cover that separately. So let's get right into it. In our last video, we brought you up to the point where we had the wing complete, but now we're working on the fuselage, and the first thing was to get the motor installed. We did have a bit of a debate as to how to go about it, but ended up using the bolts that they've supplied to mount the motor out there. We did a lot of double checking on the position that this needed to be to get it in the center out here. But by and large, the scoring that they put on the Firewall is pretty accurate as far as locating it there. And this front part of the Firewall is separate from the main part of the Firewall, and it's actually got a little bit of an angle on it, both to this, well, it's upside down here, so a little bit to the right and a little bit down. You know, you can have it reasonably straight. And just looking at my bolts here, I see that I've given it a tiny bit more down than what they've got built in. And looks pretty right as far as right to left. Okay. Now, measuring the offset angle on this, it's always a bit of a challenge. So essentially, what I did is I bolted on the prop, and one day I'll come up with something perhaps a lot longer, or whatever. But anyway, with the prop mounted on there. Initially, I measured back to the tail, and then later on, I measured here to a specific point out on the wing to get that set. So that's pretty straightforward. But the vertical offset is much more difficult in that you don't have much of a reference to work off of. So you could work off of this main part of the Firewall here, but who's to say that that's really straight? And what else is straight? So what I did is I did the sort of thing that you do when you're measuring offset of the wing, is I put the level on the tail, a bubble level on the tail, got the plane to where the horizontal stabilizer on the tail was level. Then I took a long carpenter's square with sort of a cross piece, you know, going down it to support the thing. Put that in front here, got that level, and then measured out from the vertical carpenter square, big framing square that went all the way down to the floor. But measured back from that to get the vertical. So that all worked out pretty well. We put thread locker on all of the bolts. The bolts, of course, have gone in this way, and that's to give us the freedom and flexibility to adjust things as we want out here. Essentially, you get 3 of them with the 4th one loose with the nuts away on both sides. Get 3 of them positioned to where they're tightened down. Those 3 will define the position of it. And then on that 4th one, you just snug it up from both sides, keeping that nice and equal. And that's all set. So we've now got our tail in place, and we utilized a little block of wood and a square to get it in position. Of course, we removed the covering off the bit that's in there, but got that square with that, ran the glue along there, and that's all set. Now, as we go to put the elevator on, where's our other elevator? Here we go. So we go to put the elevator on, we notice we got a problem. If we line it up out here, we've got an overlap. So we've marked off where we're going to go. We're heating up the hot knife. We're going to use that to skinny up this thing. It'll end up with a gap on the side where the elevator is, but the hinge slots are lined up for this to be straight. And just why that's like that, I don't know. Hey, I don't see anything that I missed there, so it's just these pieces are too big. Okay. Okay, now they say smear Vaseline on the bottom, petroleum jelly. We will do that. Can't say that I've ever done that before. Okay, that's pretty old. It is petroleum jelly. Typically with a hinge like this, you want to have it deflected when you put the stuff in there to make sure it's got enough clearance to be able to move. And thin CA they want. Okay. Not good. Okay, let's try this again, and I'm going to use some medium CA on there. And that one seemed to stick down fine. This one over here didn't. We'll let that cure a little bit more before we double check it with a good yank. Yeah, that seems to have done fine now. Tail wheel. Okay, so we worked the one bit into through the hole, and then we'll go up to where the tail wheel goes. This has got some holes for the screws. Well, we've got a bit of an issue with the rudder here. Okay, we got the tail wheel installed, and naturally you need to have the tail wheel sitting on the ground to have this up all the way. Otherwise, if it's hanging down, it's in the wrong place. So got it sitting where it's going to sit. And when we look at where the rudder is supposed to go, get it even with the top there. There is a very slight interference between this pin and that hinge. Now it's only a small amount, but I certainly don't want to move the hinge up, or the rudder up any. And while I could trim off a bit of the hinge, that doesn't help as far as a part of the hinge that's in there. So I think what I'm going to do is do something down here with a bit of a washer or something to lower that down a tiny bit. Tail wheel shaft will be going through this. And so that could help hold it down a little bit. Okay, so what we've done is we've cut this little, it's actually a prop adapter. A little slot in it just to be able to snap it on there. and it's still a small enough slot that even if the spring is over top of it, it can't go up. Okay, so that's giving us a little bit of space. I've put on this bit down here, gets screwed on. So this is up against that, and that's against that. So that has brought down this connector piece here. We've done as in the instructions. We've marked where that is. We've drilled a 2mm hole. We've cleaned out the covering from that slot. But this thing here is actually 2.6 millimeters. And you know, don't want to easily go into that hole. And I don't want to go smashing it. So I'm going to drill out the hole a little bit larger. This is a 2.5 mil drill bit. Naturally, you want to make sure that you go in straight, you know, both this way as well as that way. Okay, that's a nice tight fit, very tight fit. A little bit too tight still. There we go. I wouldn't be surprised if that slot isn't big enough. So we open up the slot a bit. It needs just a bit of a radius going into that hole. Try that. Okay, now I've smeared a little bit of petroleum jelly on the underside of those two spots. I put in a piece of baking paper in here because I'm going to put some glue on that rod that is going up there. And I'm going to push these guys in and have the rudder bent a bit. And then I'm going to apply the glue. Okay, that looks good. And get on our greaseless paper. And we are all set. Okay, next thing is control horns. We've now attached the control horns. We got the control rod out here to make sure that we got it precisely right where it wants to aim at, so there's minimal tension on the thing one way or the other. Just naturally comes straight out smoothly. Got the holes straight over the thing. Basically drilled it one hole, got it positioned, marked one hole, drilled it, put the bolt well into the thing to where it's just starting to come out through the other side, made sure the position is right, drilled the other hole, put that bolt in, put the thing on the other side. That's basic procedure. So we're now ready to set up the servos. We now have our servos installed. We've got the rods and the tubes and all connected. Everything is all pretty well exactly right in terms of the eyeball trims anyway. I've added that little piece of plywood down on the bottom there. This piece of plywood down in here. That's for our receiver. Going to use a 10-channel Lemon RX receiver. That's going to go down in there. And a little white tube there and another one at the bottom will be our antenna tubes for our 2 antennas. You got one vertical, one horizontal. Having used that for antenna tubes, that's the stuff here that they gave us with the control rods. And I'm sure what it's intended to do is you put it on the control rod and you have that inside the tube. And I think the idea is that it's supposed to help it slide easier. But I tried, well, first off, unless you glue it on, you can't really locate it in the tube where you want it. And if you glued it on, then you're dependent upon how well the actual stuff slides in the tube. And, you know, it's okay. But as you think about just the rod sliding in the tube, there's no resistance to that at all. There doesn't seem to be. I actually tried with this one here. I tried first off without it. I sort of felt like what it was without the control on there, just simply the thing in the tube. And then I tried putting a few of these things onto the rod and really couldn't get it in there. But you know, at any rate, I decided not to use it for that. But it makes a great antenna tube. So. And, you know, those of you that are better clued in as to how to get this stuff on there, you know, do you glue it on? You know, I suppose that would work, but anyway, you can inform me as to taking me out of my state of ignorance, but that's what I did. Okay, so we are pretty well all set to now just do the detail inside the cockpit up there. And then fasten on the cowling, and then basically I think we're done. So, going really well now. Okay, so we had some fun getting the cockpit set up. Yeah, you can play around with things as you like there, but probably well, first off, I had to look online at some pictures of actual SBDs, and this green sort of interior is sort of common. So where it goes deeper, I tried to put black to sort of give a sense of depth. Tail gunner, he's actually on a cradle that rotates. And I suppose the gun actually rotates with that, so this isn't terribly to scale. But nonetheless, I put that round black thing to give a feeling of that sort of deal. Now this is our canopy from the previous plane. And with that one, they had it all together, sort of like this. So all of that goes in the middle, and you know that goes on the front. And so they had it open, both front and back. I'm going to leave the front closed up. I'm going to do it like this, but then I'm going to put these two bits inside the back. Now note that when you put them together, the back parts go inside of the front parts. So that's how it goes on the real plane, and that's how it's set up on this as well. So this is going to go inside here, and then this is going to go inside that one. And looking at pictures online, it almost, you know, sits over the top of the guy's head, you know. It's a little bit strange. But anyway, it'll be something like that. So I'll have to play around with that a little bit. I plan on screwing this on, just in case I decide to change the configuration or whatever, someplace along the way. And probably scoot it forward so that the green back on that is just underneath that maybe. And then I've got the other one so right next to it. Yeah, something like that. We finished off the cockpit as discussed. I was able to get this screw through the corner of this back piece so that is not going to blow away or anything. and have the other screws in there, so I'm very pleased with that. We cut off the tips of the other guns and glued them on here. It's interesting how that CA leaves a bit of white residue on occasion. But anyway, so the guns will clear as we get this in, and then those go in there. Now there's two screws that go into the sides here. So what I've done for that, or what I'm doing for that, is I've taken a pin first off, and I've gone through the little hole there to give us a pinprick. And now I've got my wood burner, nice and hot, and we're just going to poke into the hole and just make it wide. I would like to get a rough idea now where we're at in terms of weight and balance. So I got the prop on, I've got a battery in, a receiver is there, it doesn't weigh much, but going to put the wing on, cockpit on and so forth, and just see roughly where we're at. Well, she's supposed to balance 92 to 96 millimeters behind the leading edge. I've got the screws that I use for the servo mounts, and they're at about 90. And so I get just behind those, and you can see that we are tail heavy. So I'll move back about a centimeter. That's probably nearly 2 centimeters back. Yeah, that's a good 2 centimeters back, so we're going to need some significant weight in the nose. I definitely want to keep the motor out there. And I'll even have a look at the possibility of sticking it out a little bit farther. Probably don't want to do too much farther, but anyway, we'll give that some thought. We also need to open these holes up for the mounting bolts. Very tight fit, so by pressing it in there, it actually fit tight enough to do the balance. But yeah, we need to open up those holes. Well, our weight and balance is still tail heavy, so we're wanting to move things forward. I moved the motor a tiny bit forward. I don't think I want to go any farther than that. Yeah, I think that looks reasonably okay with it sticking out like that. Then with this thing, I don't think it looks terribly good with it right up against the thing. Of course, I'm going to paint it black, but I think I want it back in just a little bit. And that has given me an idea. And that is that this plumbing 90 millimeter cap is just the right size for the outside of that. And I think what I'm going to do is cut off a ring off of this to glue on there to set it back a little bit. And then that ring that's on there is something that I can wrap solder around and gradually get the amount of weight that I need in the nose to trim it out. Of course, the farther forward the weight is, the less weight that you need. So it's pretty hard to beat getting it right around this in there. So we're going to try that. Okay, apologies for the noise in the background. Our neighbors decided to entertain us this afternoon. But anyway, what we're doing here, we've got these balance stands put on the balance marks. There's a panel line that seems to be pretty well where we need to be, the 92 to 96. And they don't really specify in the plan. They say based on the center section, but they don't say what part of the center section. Wing center section, 92 to 96. So, it could be any place in here. Generally we do it close to the front. But I'm just noticing that this thing here it's about 90 at this end, and it's about 100 at that end. So the 92 to 96 certainly would be happening someplace in the middle there. Yeah, it'd be happening out about here. So that might be a reasonable thing to shoot for. Also, of course, we look at our overall thing, but generally we want to go according to the plans when they've specified something. So anyway, we put it on the stands not because you can't balance it with your fingers, but if you balance it with your fingers, you have to somehow, when you decide how much weight you need, you somehow have to stick it on there, and you have to keep changing it all the time. So putting it on the balance stand is really good to work out how much weight you need up front. So that's still a little bit nose high. So I put a little bit more on there. That looks about right. This is going to slide off. I've got our thing in there. It's not quite all the way up to where it's going to end up, but you can always move the battery back anyhow. So anyway, I'm going to weigh this pile of stuff that I've got up here, and then I'm going to weigh out that amount of the solder and see if I can fit that amount around this thing that I've put together here. I've worked out that that pile of stuff there is 131 grams. And that's about half of my roll of solder, so I'm not going to do that. But what I've decided to do is I'm going to put this guy in there, which is going to leave a gap on the outside, obviously freshly painted. When that goes in there, it's going to leave a gap around the outside. Now this I'm just using as a template to mark where to position it. But you can imagine if that was sitting in here like this, it has left a nice little indentation all around the outside of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy in the dummy engine. Then I'm going to put some epoxy around in this valley, all around it, and I'm going to pour in the good old BBs. Okay, so our airplane will be loaded for bear, all ready to go into battle with plenty of ammo. It's just the ammo won't be shootable. Okay, the front of it here wasn't exactly a circle, but close enough. So anyway, I've used the remainder of this cap to position it around there, and then I've taken a pencil and I've marked around the outside, and that way when I go to put that in, I'll have something to help position that in the center. Well, we've now got our cowl all set up. Looks quite nice with that ring back around there. So anyway, we've got the ball bearings inside there for weight. That now weighs approximately 200 grams. And so we're going to get it on here, and we're going to see whether the weight and balance looks to be right. Okay, we'll put the cowl on there. Let's see, we need our ESC. We haven't got that installed yet. That's going to be up there. And boy, we are close. Will we ever get there? Okay, I'd say that's about it. We got 3 of those that are farther back, but we can scoot the battery back a little bit. Not 100% sure on the position of the ESC, but yeah, it looks like we need a bit more. So we got 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55 grams more. So now that we know that this is 200 grams, we can add the 55 onto that. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55. we'll add 55 onto that, so we'll bring that up to 255 grams, and that should be about right. With the added 55 grams in the nose, we are pretty well perfect. That looks very level to me. Maybe a tiny bit, extremely tiny bit extra weight on the nose, but not much. It's pretty well spot on the way we'd want it. So we ought to be ready to fasten on the cowl, engine cowl, and then get into the radio, solder up the connectors on our ESC, solder in the telemetry sampling cable along with that. Already got the connectors for the motor, so nearly there. Well, here we are with one VQ SBD Dauntless dive bomber. Almost ready to rip up the skies. Just a little bit of work to do on the electronics, but boy, what a beautiful plane, and just very, very pleased with how the end result is. A few challenges along the way, but boy, it's all been good, and really look forward to this plane getting it up in the air before very long. Well, I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day, enjoy your flying and your building.